and welcome to Classical Stuff You Should Know, a podcast about the classical world, old books, ancient literature, philosophy, Christian classical education, put on by three dudes.
One of our listeners described the anxiety they feel every time we intro these episodes.
Why anxiety? Like, we know
it's
where
gonna
we're
happen.
going. We know where we're going.
It'll go a little bit wrong, but we're going to get to the episode.
Like, the whole point is to get to the episode. So
Yeah.
it's not, you don't need to be anxious. We're going to get to the episode.
Once we
It's
get past
just,
this.
It's like a family, road trip.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, yeah.
You're going to put everybody in the car. Someone's going to poop in their pants.
Yeah.
Like we're going to have to stop somewhere weird for a burger.
But it's all normal,
But
right?
we're going to get to Seattle.
That's right.
Part
a
of the
mistake
process.
is just an adventure wrongly considered.
Wow.
So,
Is that a Grahamism? Or
no, it's Chesterton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good one.
Good.
Thanks. My name is Graham Donaldson, and I'm joined by, I can never do that, AJ Hannenberg
Right here.
and Thomas Fletcher Magby.
Hi.
And dear listener, have you ever wondered if small woodland creatures could teach you about morality?
Wow.
If you've ever wondered about the limits of greed or the ability to evade predators,
What?
have we got stories for you?
Cottontail? Is that
No, we're talking about Aesop's
Aesop's Fables,
Okay.
yeah. I'd be okay doing. We've done Peter Rabbit already,
Yeah.
right? So, I guess we're continuing on. I say continuing. It's been months since the last episode.
continuing
about
on.
this. Well, you did this.
Thomas's romp through the children's
Yeah.
literature.
It's basically what things is Thomas actually reading somewhat regularly, and of course, it's books with my kids. So, one of our favorite go-tos is absolutely Aesop's Fables.
Oh, yeah.
Now we have talked about Aesop before. It was like an intro to children's literature. It was a live episode here at Veritas as a part of their Paideia conference. So I think that was probably 2 years ago at this point, at least. So we talked a little bit about Aesop's Fables. I think we got to a point there of like, are these actually children's stories? And maybe we'll come around in that same, maybe that'll come up today as well. Let's talk a little bit about Aesop. What do y'all know? Graham is paying very close attention to his posture because we got.
Look how good he is.
Sorry, I'll try
like
to
a
do my
ballet
best too.
dancer.
I'm clearly the hunched over one. We got a comment on YouTube, and now, but we don't want to say that, right? That means that we listen to the criticism and we respond to it, right? Thank you, slouch, and just be your slouchy self. All right. Speaking of slouchy self, what do we know about Aesop?
He's Greek.
Okay.
He's one with the animals. I don't know.
You made that
Is he
part up.
dating Rihanna?
Yeah, I think so. Is that? Tell me more. Yeah.
Is it
That's
ASAP Rocky?
Yeah,
Is that him?
that's the squirrel, though.
ASAP? The squirrel?
There's a
Bullwinkle.
squirrel named
Oh, what?
Bullwinkle?
Right.
Aesop?
What is
Wait.
happening? I'm so lost. I think, isn't ASAP Rocky dating
Rihanna.
Dating
Yep,
Rihanna?
and
Remember
that's what I
Rocky
want to do
and
this
Bullwinkle?
episode about. Yep,
Right?
nailed it.
Yeah, these things all work
I'm
together.
following the
Yeah,
trail you just went on.
appreciate
Cool. Yeah, gotcha.
I did not, of course. Okay, so yeah.
Were they for children, the stories? Do we know this?
No,
Okay.
I would
we
say
don't
no.
know this, so they weren't for children.
Well, the way that they've been used ever since they've existed is not for children. And I guess, yeah, let's get a little bit on Aesop and then we'll get to how his stories have been used. So, yeah, so we get some references to this Aesop guy. He actually shows up in Herodotus. So we've covered him in, he's in book 2, which is, we've done an episode on. I think we only made it 3 books in because the history is very long. So I'll just read this short little section about Herodotus. Maybe my eyesight is going. Yeah. Okay. So we get, this is chapter 134 of Herodotus. There's a story about a king who leaves a pyramid. It's much smaller than others. But that there's this person, Iadmon, and Iadmon is the owner of Aesop. So Aesop is a slave to this person, Iadmon, Iadmon. It also records that Aesop went to Delphi, and then the Delphians, obeying an oracle, issued many proclamations summoning anyone who wanted it to accept compensation for the killing of Aesop. And so then Aesop gets killed in Delphi. But that's basically all we get about him in Herodotus. He's described as someone who tells stories. He is described as dying at the hand of the Delphians. And that's about all that we get for him. This is a great question. So Herodotus does not really go into it.
And we're sure it's the same Aesop?
Yeah, so mostly because of the reference to the guy who tells stories. So he was a fellow. Aesop is described as a slave and a story writer. So that is what gets him connected to the guy who writes.
So the oracle basically said, "I'll pay anyone to kill you."
Yeah, because let me get. So the story is expanded on.
I didn't know Oracle had beef ever.
Hardcore. Jeez, Oracle.
So
Oracle's hiring out assassins.
yeah, I'll read the longer. So Plutarch has an.
Do it for the family.
Wow. This is on the delay of the divine justice. So I'm just going to read it's 2 paragraphs. Certainly, if those who have done wrong were themselves punished, there is no justice in chastising those who have done no wrong. For it is not right to punish even the evildoers in their own person twice for the same offense. And if the gods, in their remissness failing to punish the guilty, afterward inflict penalties on the innocent, they do not fittingly make amends for their slow doing by unrighteous doing. Take the case of Aesop. It is said that he came hither with money furnished by Croesus, so rich man Croesus gives money to Aesop, intending to offer a magnificent sacrifice to the god of the temple and to distribute among the citizens of Delphi for Minos a piece. So give some money out to the people of Delphi. But, as it is reported, having become disaffected toward the people here on account of some affront or quarrel, he made the sacrifice indeed, but sent the rest of the money back to Sardis, sent it back home, not thinking the men of Delphi worthy of the gift. They then raised against him the charge of sacrilege and put him to death by throwing him from yonder cliff.
Dang.
From that time it is said that the god was angry with them and made their soil unfruitful and sent among them all kinds of strange diseases, so that they were round among the public assemblies of the Grecian cities, proclaiming with earnest entreaty that whoever would demand justice of them in behalf of Aesop should receive full satisfaction. So, we're kind of piecing things together. Herodotus doesn't really go into details. So a much later account from Plutarch is that Aesop is supposed to give money to the people in Delphi. He doesn't do it. Sends the money
jerks.
home. Yeah, he gets into a fight with them, and so they throw him off a cliff.
Yeah, solidifying their jerk status.
So point Aesop on that one, I guess.
Wow.
It's
They
tough to
killed the
say.
story guy.
Yeah,
How much
they
of a
did-
jerk?
they did.
He tells children's
It's like killing
stories.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
It is. Oh, but I don't know if he was that. So
That monster stole my cookies. Let's throw him off the cliff.
yeah,
Killing Cookie Monster.
yeah. So like Mr. Rogers, like really nice guy.
Presbyterian.
Presbyterian, and I guess I don't know the thing that is commented on for Aesop a lot is he's apparently an ugly dude, and I guess I just have to say it. So there's this other account of Aesop's life that's called the Aesop romance, which is like not in the affectionate sense, but in the like adventure sense. So it covers his life. It serves him serving under this guy Xanthus, his travels. He meets with the 7 sages. He goes to Delphi, and then he gets killed. So that's all recounted in the Aesop romance. But there are also a number of references to he not so pretty. So he much like us, he has a face for podcasting, right? So
An imposter for podcasting.
an imposter for podcasting. Sorry, listener. I just want to read some of these because they're very funny. His appearance was such that no one could look upon him without laughing. He was flat-nosed, hunchbacked, thick-lipped with a long belly, a head enormous and misshapen, and short, bandy legs.
Poor guy.
He was a grotesque figure, a very monster of a man, with thick lips, a pot-belly, huge head, and a complexion, and he didn't look so good. Yeah, so...
Poor guy.
yeah, so he's having
At least
a
he
rough
had
time.
stories going for him.
At least he had stories going for him. Okay, so your question was, are these children's stories? There are a few ways to answer that. One actually comes from Aristotle, so it comes from the Rhetoric, from his book on rhetoric. Do you all remember a reference to Aesop from...
Oh, man. I don't think so, because I don't read much rhetoric. We do politics and ethics.
You'll
AJ,
use it for
you probably read
senior.
rhetoric more
I have not.
frequently.
I'm not sure I've actually read the
recently than
rhetoric.
me.
Okay. So there's a story recounted in there. This is book 2, chapter 20. They're talking about fables. So there are many examples of fables, and he says, there are two varieties. The illustrative, this is quoting from, is it just the rhetoric? Is it on rhetoric? What do you call?
It's just rhetoric.
Rhetoric is the name of the book. So of the latter, so of fables, again, there are two varieties, the illustrative parallel and the fable. And then he says, e.g., the fables of Aesop or those from Libya. So Aesop gets referenced here. It's a rhetorical tool, the fable. Then Aristotle will reference Aesop using one of his fables. So again, is this something he's using with children? No, this is how he's using one of his stories. So Aesop, when defending at Samos a demagogue who was being tried for his life, related the following anecdote. A fox, while crossing a river, was driven into a ravine. Being unable to get out, she was for a long time in sore distress, and a number of dog fleas clung to her skin. A hedgehog wandering about saw her and, moved with compassion, asked her if he should remove the fleas. The fox refused, and when the hedgehog asked the reason, she answered, "They are already full of me and draw little blood, but if you take them away, others will come that are hungry and will drain what remains to me. That's the end of the story. You, in like manner, O Samians, will suffer no more harm from this man, for he is wealthy. But if you put him to death, others will come who are poor, who will steal and squander your public funds." Aristotle continues, fables are suitable for public speaking, and they have this advantage that while it is difficult to find similar things that have really happened in the past, it is easier to invent fables, for they must be invented, like comparisons. If a man is capable of seizing the analogy, and this is easy if one studies philosophy, thus, while the lessons conveyed by fables are easier to provide, those derived from facts are more useful for a deliberative oratory because, as a rule, the future resembles the past. So, rhetoric is describing when to use these different tools, right? And so here, the point is that fables, you can create them. They're all made up. And so it's very easy to come up with a fable that makes the point you want to make. Now, whether it's good or not, I guess, is a separate question. But fables are a tool of rhetoric, and this is one that's being used to save someone's life, right? So very much an adult context, right?
Yeah.
I feel like fleas don't work that way, though.
That they get full on blood and
I feel like
they
you'd have
just
to
be
be
like, well, I guess I'll just not lay eggs. I feel like they're gonna. I don't know.
And I feel like there's always room for more fleas.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you'd have to be literally covered in ticks before they take a look at you and be like, no.
Yeah. I think that's, Aristotle gets criticized for his scientific understanding, right? Like,
I don't know. It's one of those things where he's making probably what is a good point.
yeah.
That really, the grass isn't always greener, or this
Yes.
person is probably the damage he can do is a known evil, and if you get rid of him, you are probably opening yourself to an unknown worse evil.
Yeah.
And that's a good argument, but I don't know if the tick fable gets us there.
But is there some, because in your example, you could have just led with that conclusion, right? You could have said, better the enemy you know than the one you don't know.
Yeah.
But the grass is always greener, is what you said.
I think. Oh, sorry.
Well, do you get something for having the story behind it?
I think you get the indirect. So the thing is, if you have closed ears and you just don't want to hear it, your heart is set on trying this guy is guilty.
Yep.
The story, because you don't know where it's going, is like this indirect assault on you, so that when you are listening and just listening to the story and you get the conclusion and you kind of agree with it, and then you're like, oh, this applies to this. It is a bit of a you let your guard down, you let your defenses down, you let your bias down. So fables can do that kind of thing. And those sorts of analogies. So the famous one being Nathan going to King David and telling him the story about the guy who the king took his sheep. And David's like, that guy's a friggin' jerk. And then Nathan's like, you are that man.
Yeah.
So it's like that kind of thing. You can use the story to bypass the prejudice of the listener.
Yep.
And, narratives are memorable. Like someone is more likely to remember the whole story with the fleas and the warthog than they are to remember
It was a fox.
You got the fleas, though. Yeah.
No, the warthog was the guy getting the fleas off.
Oh, it was a hedgehog.
Hedgehog.
yeah.
Was it a hedgehog?
Imagine a
The
warthog
hedgehog.
trying to get the fleas
I was
off?
imagining a warthog, and I was like,
Big old tusks.
that poor fox is going to die of blood loss.
Hedgehog.
Get the
Just-
tusks in there.
I was
No,
about
it
to
was a
ask
adorable
how
little
in the
hedgehog
world.
with his big long nose.
Yes.
Oh, that
Fox
makes
has the
so much
fleas.
more sense to my head.
Yeah.
Anyway, we remember. Well, now my point's dumb because I sound like an idiot.
Well, you still remembered the important part, which is the fleas, right?
Yeah.
But it's more memorable.
Yeah.
That's going to stick with you longer. Well, that's what I was
Which
trying
is probably why we think it's for kids, because it's.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, because I don't know if this is a strength or a weakness of it, right? So, what Aesop just shared there is the story piece of it. When we read the fables, they will have a moral at the end of them, and I don't know if that weakens it. And that's what we'll go through a couple of these.
Are the morals Aesop's morals?
Yes,
Okay,
as
they're more,
I
like,
understand
added
it,
by some like wacky 17th century aristocrat.
well, here's what's tough, right? And I should say, I've given you an introduction of Aesop, but did Aesop actually write and or collect all of these stories? Probably not. I guess how do we view Homer? Like Homer was a real person, but probably the work is more than just him, right?
Well, now we see. I mean, it's kind of up in the air. For a long time, they thought that Homer wasn't a real guy,
Right.
and it was just a collected bunch of stories
Right.
from a different bunch of poets. Now they think Homer was real, but he was working with an inherited wealth of oral tradition. So he kept the stuff that worked. He was like a improvising, traveling bard.
Right.
So he would have remembered stuff from previous tellers and kept parts that worked and ditched parts that didn't work. And
Which I think would be the same here, is that you end up with a bunch of stories that are repeated over and over, and they're eventually collected together, but obviously publishing comes much later than these stories, right? Where he's 7th century BC, right? So these are very old stories. He's born in 620, dies 564. So these exist as oral tradition, oral stories, much earlier than they are written down. And there are, you get different collections of them. You're talking somewhere in the like 500 to 700 stories. So like, it seems much more likely that these are collected into a grouping that gets associated with Aesop, but probably wasn't Aesop.
Yeah.
Right.
there's probably some stories in there that were made up by just some rando
Yep.
that got
Added
mixed
in, right? Which again is totally fine. Okay, so what else?
Oh, nothing.
Oh, I thought you were about to say. Okay, so we've got a little bit of background there. There's this dude, he gets described. These stories are used. Fables are used in I always like to reference this thing. You don't even actually teach this or use it, but the progymnasmata, like fables are a part of the speeches that are prepared, right? Is that is actually like an old training in rhetoric?
Yep.
And as I understand it, that training also was not for children necessarily, or
It was mostly for children.
oh, really?
So that it was supposed to correspond with as you grew. So you started
Right.
with something like a fable,
Right.
and then you'd work your way up to a defense of some sort of law.
by the end, it's like legal, right? Like it's not, yeah.
But that was supposed to be somewhere, around thesis time. So,
When would that be?
well, I mean, I think it was probably between like 13 and 18 when you'd actually be defending a law.
Yeah. So there you go.
Like today.
Like the one that Veritas does now. That's
Oh,
right.
and I was going to say, like, all of our 14-year-olds defending laws.
Yeah. Well, it was just like a practice, and then it was supposed to prepare you for rhetoric. But it's supposed to start with a fable because that's kind of what you are dealing with as a child anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, they are legally minded when they're, like, arguing about the uniform policy
Oh, yeah.
You experience that every day.
every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's read a couple of these fables. So I went and I asked my kids for their favorite. My youngest is 1 year old and doesn't have an answer because, he's not really talking. So I have one from my 3-year-old child, my 5-year-old child, and then I asked my wife what her favorite is. So I have those three.
Can I ask if this is actually an Aesop fable or not? Is the frog and the scorpion a real Aesop fable?
The frog and the scorpion.
Or is that just like an internet joke?
Yeah.
Is it really an Aesop fable?
Scorpion and the frog. Let me make sure this is Aesop. I don't see. Yeah. Scorpion. It's sometimes attributed to Aesop, although it does not appear in any collection of Aesop's fables published before the 20th century.
All right.
So no. The answer is
Oh,
no.
okay.
But there is. So it's not an Aesop fable.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
You want to talk about it? Is
No, it's just that it's the fable of like that. Well, no, we don't talk about it.
Okay. Though maybe I should probably start here. There are, many famous Aesop's fables that people will know. The Tortoise and the Hare is probably the most famous of them, and so I was wondering this even for your example before, Graham, of you can teach people this slow and steady wins the race, right? You can give them that quote. I think you get something for having the fuller story of these two characters, and the hare has this advantage and then loses that advantage through their laziness, right?
But if you were going to bet, like 9 times out of 10,
The
or
hare wins.
99 times out of 100 maybe, who are you betting on in that
yeah, the
race?
hare every time, yeah.
Come on, Aesop. No wonder the Delphi threw him off a bridge.
I wonder if what you think of some of the morals. That's interesting. What are other famous ones? The boy who cried wolf, right? Liars are not believed even when they tell the truth, right?
The mouse, no, the fox and the lion's paw with the thorn.
Yeah, taking
that
the
one?
thorn out of the lion's paw. Yeah.
What else is there? The isn't there like a cow that a frog that puffs himself so big he pops?
Almost pops. I read
Almost
this
pops.
one. It's the ox and the frog.
That's right.
There's this ox walking around.
And that frog's like, he ain't so tough. I can puff myself. He's not so big.
Well, the one I'm thinking is that the ox is walking around, steps on a frog.
Oh.
And this is one of the mother's kids. And so the frog has to go tell the mother, hey, your son just got stepped on. And the mother goes, oh, was he this big? And puffs up. And the baby frog goes, no, he was even bigger than that. And the mother puffs herself up again. And then the baby frog goes, stop, you're going to explode if you do that again. And the moral is something about self-conceit. Self-conceit leads to self-destruction, I think is the
Something
lesson.
like that. And isn't there one about a fox and a cat, and the fox is like, I got 1,000 ways to hide, and the cat's like, all I can do is climb a tree, and then they hear a hunting party or they hear someone coming at them, and the fox has to figure out what to do, and the cat jumps up the tree, and the fox gets eaten, something like that.
Sounds like one. Fox and the Cats.
I don't know.
Yes, included in collections of Aesop's
Look at
Fables.
that.
There you go. Look at you.
Let's go.
But that scorpion thing, there's no way.
No,
you know?
it's not
Okay.
a scorpion.
Also, Ant and the Grasshopper. So,
Yep, I know that one.
kind of whether you save up or whether you
Oh, it's
are.
hitting close to home these days.
You want to say some more? You want to?
Gotta save up some money.
It is thrifty to prepare today for the wants of tomorrow. How's that? So there are many
Not in
famous
this economy, though.
many famous stories included there. But here are a few. Here are the ones that my family liked, and will want to hear what you all think the morals to each of these are. So I'll read the story. I'm going to ask you what the moral of that story is, and I guess this is a quiz show because there are 3 of them. So one of you.
Let's go.
We'll see if you all can win this one. So first one. This is my 3-year-old's favorite story. This is when I asked him what's your favorite one. This is the one. A wild boar was sharpening his tusks busily against the stump of a tree when a fox happened by. Now, the fox was always looking for a chance to make fun of his neighbors, so he made a great show of looking anxiously about, as if in fear of some hidden enemy, but the boar kept right on with his work, sharpening his tusks. "Why are you doing that?" asked the fox, asked the fox at last with a grin. "There isn't any danger that I can see." "True enough," replied the boar, "but when danger does come, there will not be time for such work as this. My weapons will have to be ready for use then, or I shall suffer for it."
That's your 3-year-old's favorite Aesop fable?
That's what I asked. Yeah. You're going to be stunned when you hear my 6-year-olds. So
I'm in.
What is the moral of this story?
Doomsday prepper kid.
What is that's your?
The moral is prepare today, or because there won't be time to prepare tomorrow, or use the day to prepare. I don't know.
People who get mocked or get eaten by zombies. Right? It's easy to make fun of something,
Yeah.
even the wise things.
Yeah. Is that your answer?
Sure.
Okay. Tell me who you think gets this one. Preparedness for war is the best guarantee of peace. Feels like a kind of left field one, right?
A little bit of a stretch.
A little bit of a stretch. I feel like that's a grand point, right?
3-year-old maybe.
I got yeah, I know. Pretty tough.
Prepare for war, mother.
We are prepared. We are prepared. Okay. I think that's probably a grand point.
Yeah, let's go.
We got preparedness. Let's go. Let's go with that. Okay.
Yeah, because AJ was talking about making fun. There's nothing about that.
Yeah.
There's nothing about that. I think, Graham, you've talked about before, we do get recurring characters through these stories as well, right?
Well, this is what Chesterton talks about in his intro, is like the personification of the animals is like the fox is a certain kind of creature, the bear, the lion is a certain kind of creature, and we have these human characteristics we ascribe onto the animals, which is, it's sort of an interesting thing. And also, Chesterton's intro to the Aesop's Fables, he also talks about the truthness of, like, how true these are. Like, they are observational truths about the nature of the world. And anybody can read these things and be like, yes, I get it. Even if you took that to a place on Earth that didn't have foxes or boars, and you just sort of described it, like, they would sort of they could still understand the truthness of the fable.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like that. But this is a question I have, and it relates to something. So our first example, we were kind of picking apart because this fox, this hedgehog, the fleas, and maybe the story isn't correct, right? Fleas may not actually work this way. Something I do wonder with this is, are these true?
Well, there's a lot of those fables where you're like, it seems like the moral is wagging the story, like the moral is forcing the story.
Sure. I mean, that's almost what Aristotle says, right?
Yeah.
You can make up any story to reach the conclusion.
So I
you
think
want
the
to.
genius I think what makes a good fable is that the moral and the story sort of like really do correspond to reality.
Yeah.
Whereas that one about the fleas is a little bit more of a stretch because someone could just stand up and say like, fleas don't work that way.
Yeah.
But no one's gonna stand up and say that pig's stupid, right? Like,
Yep.
someone could, even if someone said, "Oh, pigs don't sharpen their tusks that way,"
Right.
well, that doesn't matter because the point is. But I don't know. I think what makes a good fable is the moral and reality correspond closely.
And I guess that, I'm not going to sit here and read and review all 700, but you would think that the reason something is passed on and still a part of this collection.
Someone's going to email and say, "I want you to read and review all 700."
I would
Aesop
love that.
fables."
Let's do a 700-part series on Aesop.
That could be like a special Patreon only subscriber.
Oh.
You pay for it.
How about, you all are going to go off and travel and
Yeah,
have your
you
little down, and I'll read
review all
Aesop's fables.
700 Aesop's
That
fables.
sounds awful.
That sounds great. We could categorize them. You could have like
Rank them 1 out of 100.
Yeah.
we could
Ooh, a tier list for these. I actually kind of like that idea.
Oh, S tier
S-tier
fable.
fables.
Yeah.
Oh,
You could release that in a book.
Yeah, but-
Thomas Magby's S-tier fables.
No, but the last one during COVID when I recorded, because I did Purgatory. Do you remember this? And so I recorded my Purgatory episodes. They were solo. I published them. And we got these emails about me droning on and on. So I'm not doing that again. I learned my lesson. I know better.
I don't remember
So,
this. COVID was a crazy time.
COVID.
It was a crazy time.
5 years, boys.
So for the last couple minutes, I'm sorry if I've seemed distracted. I was trying to look up a fable I wrote for our Progym practice.
Yeah.
Did you find it?
I haven't found it. I do remember the fable though.
Keep looking. I want this.
All right. I'll keep looking. I just felt bad that I was kind of distracted, but I'll
Yep.
give it a shot.
Okay. And this, I misspoke earlier. That was actually my 5-year-old's favorite story.
it was
So
the
just
Prepare for
for
War?
whatever
That's
it's worth.
more of a
Is that-
firstborn worry,
that's
I think.
yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. So that was my 5-year-old's favorite story.
All right.
My 3-year-old's favorite story is this one. This is The Tortoise and the Eagle. A tortoise, lazily basking in the sun, complained to the seabirds for her hard fate that no one would teach her to fly. An eagle, hovering near, heard her lamentation and demanded what reward she would give him if he would take her aloft and float her in the air. "I will give you," she said, "all the riches of the Red Sea." Then the eagle responds, "I will teach you to fly then," said the eagle. And taking her up in his talons, he carried her almost to the clouds, and suddenly he let her go, and she fell on a lofty mountain. In the version we have, they fall into the sea, but I'm reading one that open source one that I can say. In this version,
Cracks open, right?
cracks open, dashing her shell to pieces. It's not like that in the kids' version we have. The tortoise exclaimed in the moment, "I have deserved my present fate, for what had I to do with wings and clouds, who can with difficulty move about on the earth?"
Doesn't the eagle come and like noshed on that turtle?
That's the story.
Oh, okay.
So it ends right there, and then then the moral is the same as the one in the kids' version, slightly translated differently. But okay, so that's the story.
Okay.
Tortoise wants to fly, gets taken up, and then dropped. In the nicer version, it's into the sea, and the tortoise is fine, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, it dies on the side of a mountain. Yeah. What is the moral of this story?
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. What's your... AJ's thinking.
Scintillating
He's thinking.
content.
Yeah, I mean, it was just translate back to stay in your lane. I'll say turtles shouldn't fly.
Turtles
I'm going to give Graham the point.
Shouldn't... yeah, I think it is a grand point also. Here's the moral. If men had all they wished, they would be often ruined. How's that for a moral? That's
Yeah,
heavy
right.
stuff, right?
All right.
But I think that's spot on, right? If we got everything we wanted,
Hell is getting what you want.
hell is getting what you want. That's right. So if men had all they wished, they would often be ruined. So is that metal? Is that so metal?
Yeah,
Okay.
that
So my
makes sense.
3-year-old is super metal. That's all.
Shattered turtle.
Good.
That's
Okay.
that's pretty.
Yeah.
All right. Then the third of these. This is one of the more famous ones. This is my wife likes this one. I like this one as well. This is the town mouse and the country mouse. Do y'all know this one? I guess this is your life, Graham, isn't it?
This is my life.
Yeah. Now, you must know that a town mouse once is a little bit longer, so here we go. Now, you must know that a town mouse once upon a time went on a visit to his cousin in the country. He was rough and ready, this cousin, but he loved his town friend and made him heartily welcome. Beans and bacon, cheese and bread were all he had to offer, but he offered them freely. The town mouse, rather, turned up his long nose at this country fare and said, I cannot understand, cousin, how you can put up with such poor food as this. But of course you cannot expect anything better in the country. Come you with me, and I will show you how to live. When you have been in town for a week, you will wonder how you could ever have stood a country life. No sooner said than done. The two mice set off for the town and arrived at the town mouse's residence late at night. You will want some refreshment after our long journey, said the polite town mouse, and took his friend into the grand dining room. There they found the remains of a fine feast, and soon the two mice were eating up jellies and cakes and all that was nice. Suddenly, they heard growling and barking. What is that? Said the country mouse. It is only the dogs of the house, answered the other. Only, said the country mouse. I do not like that music at my dinner. Just at that moment, the door flew open. In came two huge mastiffs, and the two mice had to scamper down and run off. Goodbye, cousin, said the country mouse. What? Going so soon? Said the other. Yes, he replied. What is the moral of that story?
Flight to the suburbs.
Oh, interesting. So this would be like the countryside, though, right? This is more you than
This is the flight.
more you than me.
Better simple fare in a peaceful house than a dangerous house for kings.
There you go.
That's mine.
The loves of one man don't necessarily translate to other men.
I like that. Graham almost had it word for word.
Gosh dang it.
So
I have read these.
Yeah.
Like in my life.
yeah.
recently?
Nah, not recently.
Okay.
Maybe 2 years ago for the
Oh, for when we did that, yeah. Here's how this one has it. Better beans and bacon and peace than cakes and ale and fear. Yeah, I had almost the first one almost word for word. So better the simple things in peace than the nicer things
thing
in
is,
fear.
it's like beans and bacon.
Sounds great.
It sounds awesome. It was
Yeah.
like beans and bacon and cheese.
and bread.
Oh, I mean, like,
Sign me up, right?
yes, that sounds great. I mean, like, jellies and cakes are great,
Yeah.
but
You can only have so much.
Well, the jelly, not so much. The cakes, though. That
cake and beer. People reference cake and beer as if they go together. I don't think cake and beer go together.
it's too much, right?
Why would those go together?
Too
They,
heavy.
they talk about this. This is the thing.
Who's
often.
they? Tell me more about
Yeah.
these people.
They're the overlords.
Okay, cool. All right. We've
Cake
done.
Cake boss. Big beer.
Sounds delicious.
I'm trying to look for some. I wanted some like bad Aesop's fables, like ones that.
There's definitely some where like the moral does not really correspond to the story in a way that intuitively makes sense.
Yeah, this one is not as much the left turn kind of moral. It's one that I see people saying is like it's a bad moral, but
This is like good fence make good neighbors, and you're like, I don't know if you know what that means.
yeah. Let me take this one. So this is one where the it's like, well, let me just read the story. This is the wolf and the lamb. A stray lamb stood drinking early one morning on the bank of a woodland stream. That very same morning, a hungry wolf came by farther up the stream, hunting for something to eat. He soon got his eyes on the lamb. As a rule, Mr. Wolf snapped up such delicious morsels without making any bones about it, but this lamb looked so very helpless and innocent that the wolf felt he ought to have some kind of excuse for taking its life. "How dare you paddle around in my stream and stir up all the mud?" he shouted fiercely. "You deserve to be punished severely for your rashness." "But, your highness," replied the trembling lamb, "do not be angry. I cannot possibly muddy the water you are drinking up there. Remember, you are upstream and I am downstream." "You do muddy it," retorted the wolf savagely. "And besides, I have heard that you told lies about me last year." "How could I have done so?" pleaded the lamb. "I wasn't born until this year." "If it wasn't you, it was your brother." "I have no brothers." "Well then," snarled the wolf, "it was someone in your family anyway. But no matter who it was, I do not intend to be talked out of my breakfast." And without more words, the wolf seized the poor lamb and carried her off to the forest. What is the moral of this lesson?
I'll let AJ go first because I've got to go first.
I feel like I have to phrase it right. There's no defense against determined evil.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar. Like, yeah, like the guilty heart will make excuses for its own guilt.
I think that might still have to be Graham. Let me read it. Both of your answers were very good. The tyrant can always find an excuse for his tyranny. The unjust will not listen to the reasoning of the innocent. That might be both.
I
think yours is actually.
I got it.
Yeah. Let's give that to AJ.
Because mine was talking about guilty heart.
Guilty.
but not the time,
There's
yeah.
none there.
Yeah.
The tyrant can always find an excuse for his tyranny. The unjust will not listen to the reasoning of the innocent. I think that's one of the.
It's great.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It's not a nice lesson, right? And that's
true,
probably what gets you into are these children's stories? That's a pretty harsh thing to learn, but
It's a good thing to learn.
a good thing to learn, a good thing to be aware of, right? All right. Any others that you all have in mind that you're like, this is my favorite story? Or Graham, you said you read them recently. Are there any that stuck out to you?
Don't think so. There's usually ones where like I always like the Aesop fables where someone's making fun of something that the other animal has that's like perfectly natural and incredibly useful to them. I guess is it Aesop's fable, The Fox and the Hedgehog, where the fox has like 1,000 ways to do something and the hedgehog just has one? You know that? Maybe that's what I was talking about with the cat.
Yeah. Let me see. It's ascribed to Aesop. Let me get you a version of that one.
Or the porcupine, the fox and the porcupine. The porcupine has like one way to defend itself, and the fox has 1,000 ways to defend itself.
Yeah.
Something like
A
that.
fox swimming across a river was. Is this the right one? I don't think this is the same point you're making though, because that's the point is supposed to be about knowing one thing versus lots of things, right? Yeah. The one that is Fox and the Hedgehog I see is a fox swimming across a river was barely able to reach the bank where he lay, bruised and exhausted from his struggle with the swift current. Soon a swarm of blood-sucking flies settled on him. Oh, it's actually the same story from before. Oh, that was a fox and a hedgehog, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. That's the one that I have popping up is the one that he told to save that guy's life.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of something different.
Could be, but
I like them because the mind that it takes to craft a fable is like someone who has observed human nature and the truism. So they're almost like proverbs.
yep.
I guess the question I have is like, how is a fable different than a parable? Because they're both being analogies. They're both sort of talking about trying to draw conclusions about something. Is there like an easy difference to delineate between the two? Like, does Jesus speak in fables? He speaks in parables. Is there a difference?
Parables are often with human characters, often within a larger religious context is what, but I don't have a great answer for that. A fable is a short, often fictional story, typically features animals or inanimate objects as characters and conveys a moral lesson explicitly stated at the end. A parable, on the other hand, is a brief story that illustrates a moral or spiritual lesson, often with human characters.
So maybe like parables are less about like a pithy little saying at the end and more about like talking about a greater reality that like almost defies a pithy saying.
I wonder if that's a reason for fables to be more associated for children.
Because they're kind of these little...
They're easier, right? They're just more
easier.
straightforward.
Yeah.
There's kind of one lesson to it. You're not going to sit around and like really think about the meaning of this because it's kind of interpreted for you.
Whereas you can spend a lot of time thinking about the mustard seed
Yeah.
and faith as a mustard seed and all that stuff.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, cool.
All right. What are you going to say?
I could never find my fable. I do
wish you
remember it
could.
though.
Let's hear it.
So
what was it about?
We should write our own fables.
there were two salmon,
Okay.
Chris and Daniel. They had been friends since birth. Now that they were adolescent fish, just coming up on their reproductive years, they came back to the breeding grounds where they were born. They both entered the head of the stream and swam relatively briskly for the first little bit, and then coming up against the first waterfall, was it Daniel? Daniel and Chris? I made up two names. Was that it? Was it it?
I think
Does
so.
it matter?
Okay, so Daniel, the industrious fish, swam his hardest and jumped that little waterfall and did really well. And he called down to his buddy Chris and said, "Chris, come on up." And Chris is like, "That seems like a lot of work. I think I'll stay here for a while." And he's like, "Chris, if you don't come right away, like all the breeding will be done and you will be lost and you'll have no family and you'll be alone forever. And he says, I'm not sure that I'll be along in a minute. And so Daniel went on his way and Chris came, and eventually Chris got close enough to another waterfall and Daniel called down. He's like, hey, how's it going down there? And Chris is like, all right, I'm just taking my easy time. And Daniel's like, I'm telling you, you're not going to make it. Like, you're going to keep on trying, but all the breeding will be done. The eggs will be there and you'll be alone. And then Daniel, on the next waterfall, swam his hardest and leapt his little heart out, and he was caught in the jaws of a bear, and the bear ate Daniel. And the moral of the story is that no matter how hard you work, everybody dies.
That's terrible.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
So who did it better, Aesop or AJ?
Toil away,
There you are.
young mortal. Everyone dies. I wrote that when we were doing pro-gymnasmata practice with my students, and that's why I thought I could find it somewhere on my drive, but I just couldn't.
So you used to
track it
teach
down.
that, and then
Yeah, what I found is that, like, that's why I said it's age centric, is because my kids weren't really interested in it anymore, right? Like, it needed to be something that developed as they did, and it just was not hitting. So
I like it. Well, there you go. That's Aesop's Fables. Check them out. You know, as with a bunch of the old works, they're all online. And again, not only for children. I think super useful thing just to take home, just to bring home the moral lessons, or I don't know if you're speaking or writing, just kind of easy references to point to make certain conclusions. So
Maybe we'll try to write fables in the in-between.
there we go.
and if you're
We'll come
looking
up
for
with
a
one.
fun fable, one of my favorite comedians does a great one. James Acaster. Look up the fable of the goose and the swan.
Okay.
Or the goose and the what is it? What's the really slow animal called? Sloth. Goose and the sloth.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll listen to it before the in between, so
And we can talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it if you want to.
I like this
but
plan.
I think it's clean. If I remember correctly, it's a clean little fable. He's not always clean, but I think this part is. So look it up, YouTube. That's a good one.
I like it.
Awesome. Well, this has been Classical Stuff You Should Know, Classical Fables You Should Know with Graham, Thomas, and AJ. And you can find us on Patreon, where we have in-between episodes, where we have monthly AMAs, where we have other sort of backlogs of episodes that never seen the light of day. Don't we?
Was it-
We have some.
Are you talking about the ones we've taken down,
Or just like old talks we've
Oh, you
given.
do. Yeah, we have bonus things. Yes.
And we also have Twitter, where I will sort of like and sometimes say stuff. We've got a website where you can also find our episodes, classicalstuff.net. And you can email us at theguys@classicalstuff.net. And
Are we dating ourselves by still calling it Twitter?
Doesn't everyone still call it Twitter?
X.
X, formerly known as Twitter?
Everyone sort of says X in an apologetic and makes the same joke.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I will. You know what?
What?
I'm going to call it Twitter because
Because you know what? Screw the man.
yes, right.
Wow.
Come at us.
Taking a stand.
Anyway, you can find us on X.
Cool.
At Classical Stuff, and we thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next week or on the secret Patreon pages.
That's right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.